Hi, my name is Dorothy, and I am the host and producer of the Death in Cambodia, Life in America podcast. And today we have donated all the audio files from the Death in Cambodia podcast, specifically the ones with my father and I. Also have donated a lot of pictures, old photos that my dad has kept, even pre-Khmer Rouge, as well as all the transcripts and all of the actual handwritten notes that my father and I have collected while we were in the podcast recording process. So the Death in Cambodia, Life in America podcast is a series of interviews that I have conducted with my dad. We started as a COVID project, and over in the course of 8 months, we recorded 45 episodes that outline exactly what he witnessed during 1975 to 1979, which was the Cambodian genocide that happened post-Vietnam War. I knew I wanted to capture my father's story. I just didn't really know how. So I thought maybe it'd be simple just to ask him some questions. The day that we clicked record, I knew that we had something really, really special. By the third week, we went viral, and it seems like a bunch of other Cambodians around the world, especially the countries where the diaspora happened, such as Australia, France, and definitely here in the US. Many of them were also really curious about what had happened to their own parents. The Cambodian genocide really is not highlighted in history books, and so currently these audio files are the largest audio collection out there to this day. The Khmer Rouge was only 40 years ago. It is one of our most recent genocides. It is the reason why 99% of the Cambodians here in America are here. The majority of them are here as refugees from that time. And yet we barely have any content about it. I question why it was so hard for me to learn about my own family's history, why it took me 25 years to learn about what had happened to something that was just one generation away from me. It's the very first time my father is recalling all of these memories that he has tried to forget, that he stored in the back of his memory. So our process when it came to recording is the day before recording, I would kind of let him know of the general topic that we're going to be talking about, as well as just the flow, naturally where the storyline went. And that would give him a day to kind of gather his thoughts and recollect and kind of open up those doors that he's been closing for so long. Intergenerational trauma is just such a real thing that I feel like not a lot of people talk about, especially, and I don't know if it's a cultural thing, maybe within, the Asian culture, there's a lot of generational silence. A lot of people think that pushing it down and disregarding it and just moving forward is the right way to go and is the way to forget, but it's not. My father told me that it wasn't until after probably our last recording, he turned over to me and he said, I've stopped having nightmares. Every Cambodian refugee who had come through America comes through with this shot. It looks kind of like a mug shot where they're like holding up this sign, and it's usually starts with the number, the order number, and the amount of people in the group, and then some random numbers and a dash. Basically, it's an identification plaque that you have to take a photo with before you enter the States. So his photo in particular is the photo of the podcast. It's the podcast artwork. But I think the significance of that I have seen is his photo specifically. It says 7/7. So that means that out of 7 people in his group, and that includes my grandma and my aunties and uncles, he was the 7th one, meaning he was the last person to go into the States. And I think that is just so, that is so him, that is so Robert. He's always been the backbone of the family. He's always been the one charging and building companies and empires and making sure the family is okay and taking care of everybody but himself. And I think that plaque, taken at 16 years old, is evidence of that. He allowed everyone else in the family to go first into the US before he, being the 7th member of the 7, went in. My grandmother, I call her Mama, she passed away probably about 6 years ago, and that was before I even thought about creating the podcast. But through recording the podcast, I had found out that she was one of the most prominent people in this story that kept my father alive and kept the entire family alive. She was a strong negotiator, she was charismatic, and she was able to use and leverage her connections to really keep her kids safe. And that was a beautiful lesson of a mother's love, people's strength in hard times, and the power of women in this time period. I wanted this project to be very much a family project, and my brother is a music composer, and I essentially just gave him a snippet of what my father had experienced, and he would then try to compose music that went along with what he thought would be the kind of music that would accompany something from that time period, whether it be Robert going through the jungles of Thailand, or it be escaping the landmines or coming to America. My brother composed something that he thought would match those particular moments. For the Cambodians out there, I hope that they feel a sense of pride and a sense of validity. Refugees had lived their whole lives being disregarded by the history books, being disregarded by the world as if this wasn't important. And I hope that the second generation can lean on this as a tool to learn about their own past and use it as a mode to heal for future generations. Pepperdine's library is, I believe, the perfect place to be donating this material. There is a huge history of Cambodians and donut shops in California, specifically Southern California, which is where it truly started. And I really just do hope that people who are even remotely interested in any kind of horrific thing that happens outside, whether it be a genocide or in any other country, I want them to be able to have a resource from a first-hand survivor. I think the thing about the Khmer Rouge and the Cambodian genocide, unfortunately, is all the content out there, all the movies and all the books, a good majority of them are not written by first-hand survivors. And I think in order for us to really capture the truth, to capture the true history, it would have to absolutely come from somebody who lived it themselves. And I am a real advocate on making sure that the history is not only told, but it's told correctly. So I hope that anybody who is interested in learning about the Khmer Rouge, learning about Cambodians in America, why are there so many donut shops in California, that they would be able to kind of fulfill that education from the direct source, which is here at Pepperdine Library.